what is the thing you're trying to say?
The point I'm trying to say is there is a problem with the whole if-true statement is because how do we... It goes back to the precept, right? It's like, how do you know that shit? How do you know? This is the problem. We can't confirm how do we know something that we can't confirm to be either true or false, because it's just so bizarre. So even if it's God, even if it's ice cream, we can't confirm this to be the case. But I like Bates' video in the sense like there's a point to where we can establish at least a logical pattern, so we can go, well, this would be the best way to do it, which Bert did, which I agree with.
Yeah, but Bert's definition, upon trying to apply it, you can't, because you first must establish the truth of the case, which you cannot do. So to me, neither one of those definitions have any application.
No, he did, but he did in the sense of algorithmically, right? In the sense like how would one go about, if this is X, then this would be Y, and the outcome would be Z.
Okay, so it depends on, it's not about what definition you choose, it's about what standard you hold to what would be considered a justification. If you require 100% certainty before you would say that you know something, then of course you're never going to say that you know any fact about science. But if you don't hold that standard and you see examples of what you would consider knowledge, even if you hold it as defeasible or something that, you know, certainty is nice to have if you could have it, but it's not some kind of necessity that's required for the standard that we're going to hold for knowledge, then you can say something is knowledge, or say you have warrant to claim that you know something, even if you're not 100% certain about it.
So you're saying if I just relax sort of
your standards,
my standards for truth, then I'd be fine.
Well,
okay, maybe.
Yeah, it's not your standards for truth. It's not your standards for truth. It's
what?
For warrant.
It's your confidence.
For public credibility. Yeah.
Right. So hold on. Let me.
I'm going to need you to explain that.
Wait. Hold on. Yeah, I will. Hold on 1 second. Okay. Shanna just said that certainty means nothing, and that's actually similar to what your issue is, Helena. Is that for me, certainty doesn't mean guaranteed certainty. I think that's when certainty means nothing. There's no such state of something being in a position epistemically to say that that it's guaranteed to be the case. When Helena's talking about her issues with the
I'm talking about one of my issues.
Right. One of your issues with
one of them.
The with knowledge that under either of these definitions, it doesn't mean anything, or it doesn't help, or it doesn't. I think what
it doesn't have application is what I want to say.
Right. I would say that, and you're saying that about truth as well, right? Is that
I'm
right?
saying the reason neither one of those definitions can have application is because in fact we can't know if some proposition is true, right? So it's a problem. It's an epistemic problem with truth. So it's a good definition. I agree. It's what we mean, but we can't. I don't think we can really apply it.
We can't know that we know. It's right.
We can't know that we know.
But
you're forgetting the definition. The definition that you've agreed to is that is one that implies that we can know things. We can, and that means that we can know the truth. That's what it means to know, is to be in possession of the truth. What you're hung up on here is that you can't know that you know, and you think that unless you do that, the concept is useless.
Yeah, right? I don't think that's what I don't know about that. It could be. I feel like that's not it, right? It's because it's not really about the person knowing that they know. It's just that in order for us to call it knowledge, regardless of whether we use justified or the process by which the thing that caused the belief, right? We have to be able to, I think, according to these definitions, they kind of require a theoretical ability to stand outside and know what the actual state of affairs is, then compare the belief to the actual state of affairs. And if it qualifies as matching the actual state of affairs, then we can call it knowledge. But we actually can't do that in real life because we can never be in that position.
Right, but why is that a condition on either a condition on knowledge or a condition on the utility of the concept. It's an analytical distinction that we're making between a false belief, a true belief, a justified belief that happens to be false, and a justified belief that is true, or a reliably produced true belief, depending on which definition of knowledge you want to use. These are analytical distinctions, right?
Yes.
And the definitions are merely supposed to capture the distinctions that we in fact make.
I agree.
When we use that term, right? Okay,
yeah.
so now if you want to say, wow, she turned into a werewolf right here live.
Yeah, what the fuck? What was that? What was that?
I'm telling you, she's a werewolf.
That was the rapture, probably.
That was like
that was crazy.
That's lycanthropy.
That's simply deer in the yard. Nothing to concern yourself about.
Yeah, those sound
deer in the yard? It sounded like a thriller film or some shit.
Well, you know, it's the causal relationship between deer in the yard and the presence of dogs.
Yeah, you know what? I think Quentin Tarantino should direct that new film. Deer
But wait,
in the yard.
Ozzy, go on, please. Right, so I'm with you so far.
Okay, I'm not entirely sure where I left off. Do you recall what I said last?
Well, I think you were going to show me that.
Oh, right. It's an analytical distinction that we make, right? Now,
right.
So
so that we can come up with a good definition that captures what people really mean.
Right. Now, it's important that we capture what we mean, right? If we want to mean what we say and say what we mean. That's why we're in the business of trying to formalize this definition. Okay.
Okay.
But I think that sort of the pragmatist in you is saying, well, what is the function of having this more rigorous definition if I can't, from moment to moment, tell if I'm in possession of knowledge or not? Right? I think that's what's bothering you, right? It's like, well, what good is the concept if I can't tell if I'm in possession of knowledge or someone else is in possession of knowledge or not?
Yeah, I guess that is what I mean. I mean, I think that it's really they're both of them, and I think Bert's is better than the other one, at least right now I do, at really explaining what it is people mean when they say knowledge or he knows something, right? But it is really of no use, exactly like you said, because of this truth requirement.
Okay, but
you can't classify it technically as knowledge unless you already know the truth.
Okay, but why should that be? Why should that be a concern? Why does that render the concept unusable? We literally are using it every day of our lives, right? We routinely distinguish cases where we say so and so didn't know something and so did know something, right? I mean, if you know, the example I give is, you know, we don't say that people in antiquity knew that the Earth was flat. They couldn't have known the Earth was flat.
We withdraw that from them.
We withdraw knowledge. We say no. Because as soon as we discovered that by our lights the world is round, they couldn't ever have known it. We don't say they did know it and they stopped knowing it when we discovered the world was round. No, it turns out they never knew it. Now, if tomorrow we discovered that the flat earthers are right,
we wouldn't have known.
Okay, then we would say, you know, I thought I knew the Earth was round, and we would retract it from ourselves, right?
Yes.
This pattern of attribution and retractions is actually an important one. It actually captures something that we value about certain states of belief. The idea is that we recognize that there are occasions under which beliefs arise that is different with respect to formulating a map, okay, than other conditions when beliefs arise, where the beliefs are wrong or the beliefs happen to be true quite coincidentally and didn't arise through some kind of reliable production, okay? And that's the application of the concept. Helen, I don't even know if you're here right now because I think you might have turned into a werewolf again and gone on a rampage.
I'm here.
Okay, thank you. So what I think is bothering you is that it doesn't give you, it doesn't come with a procedure, a recipe for arriving at knowledge. Of course it doesn't. Why would a definition of knowledge do that, right? But I think you're frustrated because you're saying, well, if it doesn't do that, then why do I care? You already care. You're already making the distinction. And the reason you make the distinction is we all recognize that there is a difference between having a false belief and a true belief. There's a difference between having a belief where one has reasons and one is still wrong. And we distinguish that from a belief where one has reasons and one is right, but just coincidentally lucky right, like rolling dice and you happen to get lucky. And we distinguish that from the conditions when you have a belief and it is true and you had some good reasons. And specifically, though, the reasons are causal reasons whereby the state of affairs is what caused you to have the belief. And there was a reliable belief-forming process operative that generated the belief. These are all different conditions for arriving at beliefs, true or false. And we recognize that one of those is the only one we want to have. Right? It's the only one we want to have. I don't want a belief-forming process that isn't reliable. I don't want a random number generator in my head that generates beliefs that turn out all to be true. Okay? Because if they just happen to all turn out to be true, then in a randomly generated, I have no reason to think that tomorrow that random generator is going to generate true beliefs. They could all start turning out to be false or 50-50 or whatever, right? But if the belief-forming processes and practices that I employ are genuinely reliable and conduce to true beliefs, then those are the processes that I should be using, right? Now this is a normative belief-forming process. Right? A reliable belief-forming process is by definition a normative one, the one you ought to have, the one you ought to want, the one worth wanting. The others are not worth wanting, right? Your frustration, and you're not alone, everyone feels this frustrations, I feel this frustration, is, darn, I wish it came with a decision procedure, though. I wish that by understanding what we mean when we talk about knowledge, that what would fall out of that would be a decision procedure, a verification procedure that would allow us to tell when my beliefs are knowledge or constitute knowledge and when they're not, right? I would like it if my definition of knowledge could somehow magically allow me to tag each of my beliefs with ding, knowledge, not knowledge, ding, knowledge, not knowledge, right? We would love it if that were the case, right? Or that it would either come up with a procedure that would allow me to read that tag or not. But they don't come tagged, right? They just don't. And so I think that the frustration it's natural to feel the frustration because we all want to be in possession of knowledge, but a definition of knowledge cannot by itself supply a process that will secure knowledge. And even the processes or the procedures that one could offer, what are called verification procedures for knowledge, verification theories and verification procedures for knowledge cannot themselves guarantee that you will have knowledge, right? But that's what, so I mean, I think that's what's bothering you. I mean, I've been going on a long time, and I want to make sure I'm not putting words in your mouth at this point. But does that sound right to you? Like that's what's frustrating? So that's why it seems impractical, maybe?
It could be. I mean, very much could be. Yeah, it very much could be. Or there really is no such thing as knowledge.
Well, no, that's a possibility. But I would say this: if you grant that there are distinctions to be made between false beliefs and true beliefs, and that true beliefs can then be subcategorized into beliefs for which one has reasons and ones for which we have no reasons. Some of those reasons can be spurious and just lucky accidents, and some that are reliable belief-forming processes. As long as you recognize that those distinctions are distinctions that matter, then knowledge matters to you, right? So and so for a person to say, well, then what's the point or something like that? Look, this is a value that you have, right? And you can say, well, I don't know why I value it. Well, okay, you don't know why you value true beliefs that are reliably produced? I think have you forgotten what a map is for, right? Right. That's my sense is that this is a normative concept, right? Normative concepts are concepts that come laden with a value. We value knowledge. We just do.
Yeah.
Then you say, well, what's the point of it? Look, that's like what's the point of pleasure? It doesn't have to have a point, right?
Well,
yeah.
Okay. Well, can I actually then?
I mean, the fact that I'm sorry, Stein.
Well, go on, Helen. You go first, and I'll.
I was just going to say the fact that whether or not something is true is arguable doesn't matter. with respect to all this other stuff.
is that the definition of knowledge is agnostic on whether or not knowledge exists or anyone has it.
I think that's exactly right. Yeah.
I think it has to. If you confect a definition of knowledge that guarantees that we have knowledge already, then first of all, you're begging the question against skepticism. Okay. So we definitely don't want that. And that's no different than defining knowledge in a way that puts it out of reach in principle. That is not a workable definition of knowledge either, right? It might be, just as a contingent fact, that we don't know things, okay? So if knowledge is understood as justified true belief, and the justification condition is understood to be an internalist condition where the agent, the subject, has to know that they know. They have to satisfy the KK principle, the know that you know principle. Then in order to know something, you have to know that you know it. And in order to know that, you have to know that you know that in infinite regress. Then that is a definition of knowledge that puts knowledge out of reach even for a god. Okay? So there's that is a definition of knowledge that where you don't just turn out to not know because of the conditions you find yourself in. That is a definition of knowledge that can never be satisfied, and so that definition of knowledge, I think, is a non-starter. It needs to be sort of just thrown off the table, because it what's the word? It sort of stacks the deck. It poisons the well. It makes it impossible for knowledge to be a usable concept. And I think it's fine to have a usable concept that, in fact, is nowhere to be found in the world. I liken this all the time to a two-dimensional Euclidean plane. Imagine a flat Euclidean two-dimensional plane that extends two-dimensionally along the x and y axis, but not along the up and down along the z axis. It is absolutely flat, completely featureless. It has no height whatsoever, zero height. Okay, we don't find such things in the world, but that concept serves as a limit, right? It's an idealization of flatness, of the flatness that we do see, and consequently, we can approximate, we can scale, we could array things, we can line things up and say, this is flatter than that. My floor is flatter than my lawn, and my kitchen table is flatter than my floor, and and you can keep sort of array things and scale things, and so the limiting case, the absolute limiting case of flatness, is the standard, defines all of the other cases of ordinary flatness that we do experience. And I think that the idea of knowledge is it is an abstraction, because we don't have independent access to the truth. I mean, if we had independent access to the truth, we wouldn't need beliefs, right? And you couldn't be wrong. You wouldn't bother getting around to being wrong. You wouldn't form false beliefs if you could just consult the truth somehow, right? But knowledge, I think, is a concept that is an idealization, okay? And we distinguish between various states of belief, and we can align things and go, okay, this is closer to what knowledge is. And what is our measure of that? The actual measure of that is the absolute standard that we apply, the definition of knowledge that we apply, and our concept of warrant. Our concept of warrant lines up with our concept of reliable production, right? There are various ways that beliefs can be reliably produced. They can be reliably produced through crude physical processes like vision and audition and touch and all the rest of it. But they can also be not just inferential. They don't have to be cognitive processes that are hardwired and built in. They could also be inferential processes like deduction and induction and abduction. They can also be social, reliance on legitimate expertise and authority, that sort of thing, right? So warrant is the concept that really matters. Some people here will remember, actually, Chris and Shanna will remember they did a Hangout with Trey Jadlow like a year and a half ago almost, and Shanna read out a quote that I beamed to her in a private message, where I said, certainty doesn't give us anything that a well-warranted belief won't give us, right? That's what we want. We want our beliefs to be well-warranted, because that's the only practical measure we have of how close we can get to this ideal limit. But the definition of knowledge, think of it as the ideal limit, like the ideal flat plane. It doesn't have to exist in the world, and you don't have to be able to recognize it when you see it. I mean, let's face it, if there was an ideal flat plane, you wouldn't see it anyway. right? It has no height. You wouldn't be able to see it. You'd walk right through it and you wouldn't know it, right? It wouldn't be a three-dimensional object. It'd be a two-dimensional object. You'd walk right through it without knowing it was there. Right? There's nothing you can do causally with an idealization like a two-dimensional flat plane. There's nothing you can do with the concept of knowledge, right? Except that use it as a standard against which you measure other kinds of beliefs, the kinds of beliefs you don't want, and you can line those up against the kinds of beliefs you would rather have. And knowledge is the idealization, that's the normative standard, the kind of belief you would like to have, the way you would like your beliefs to be produced. That's how I see it.